Alright, we're going to do a little tutorial on Draftsight, and I'm going to make a truss and show you a little bit how I draw stuff. So one of the things that I use a lot is layers. I go up there, make a new layer, and we'll call one dims, and that's for dimension stuff. And the second new layer we'll call construction, and that's just for construction lines, layout lines, whatever. I usually like to make it be cyan, the dimensions magenta. I've also switched my background around so that it's black, just because I can see black or lines easier on a black background. Now, up here in the left corner, there's a drop down. You can select what layer you're drawing on and switch that as you go along. So mostly what I use is you'll use the line command, rectangle, the arc, and the circle. You can use a block like a combine or attach command to put a drawing piece all together so you can move it without having to grab a lasso around it. The other commands that are really useful are dimension, mostly linear or aligned, or angular, right there. Modify, you'll use a ton of these. So you can do patterns. If you draw an element or a bunch of elements and you want to make a rectangular or circular pattern out of it, that's the command you'd use. Copy just copies. Offset is like copy, but it will offset multiple things. So like if you've drawn a box, it will offset to the inside or the outside of the box. Mirror mirrors it left and right, up and down. I don't use change length. I use move, rotate, not so much scale or stretch. I will use fillets and chamfers, extend and trim, and then if you've made blocks and you want to make them break apart so you can modify something, you'll use explode. And then when we get ready to save it, you can save, and it saves as a DWG file, but since we're doing it for the Cricut, we want to go export, and export as an SVG, Scalable Vector Graphics, and that's the one you pick. So let's make a truss. Just pick the rectangle. Now I've already made the written down here with on my notepad how big the truss is. So I'm going to start. It's asking me if you look at the bottom, specify the start corner. 0, 0 is the origin, and I know that my truss is 2.872 wide. So 2.872 we type in, comma, and it's 360 thousandths at the peak. Let's type that in. Okay, so now we've got and we can go view, zoom, fit, and now we've got our box, our basic box on our construction layer for our truss. So now I'm going to draw another line, and I'm going to start at 0, comma, so I know that the truss is 0.229 at the low point, or the outer edge. So that's where we're starting our line at. And now I can stretch, and you see that little triangle there? That's where Draftsight's going to snap to. So I'll snap to there and make my line. Now, to cancel my line, sorry, just a second here. So I snap my line to the center. So basically I've got half of my truss drawn right here. I'm going to draw another line from the center down, and then I want to break this rectangle. You see how it all highlights when I hover over it? So I hit escape, get out of my current command, select the rectangle, go modify, explode. Now, see how only the bottom line lights up? So I'm going to trim that, modify trim, select my cutting edge. The reason I'm doing that is because now I can put in another vertical, because now it'll pick that center point. But you notice that it won't, it'll pick perpendicular. Whoops. If I hold it there, it says perpendicular. It'll snap to that perpendicular point. Alright? So I'll have a vertical here and a vertical here, and then I'll have diagonals connecting those two. So let's go ahead and trim this the rest of the way. Trim, I want this as my cutting edge. And we're going to trim off this and that. Get rid of those. And then let's draw in the diagonals from the peak to here, and from the peak to here. Put them in. Now, let's switch layers. It won't matter that I'm switching layers because it's going to copy the object properties from the lines that I'm copying. But what I'm going to do is make these thicker. So I've got the geometry laid out, but now I actually want the lines where we want to cut. And I'm going to make them 50 thousandths, which corresponds to about an 8-inch wide board. So we go modify offset, okay, and we specify the distance, 0.025 for the diagonals and for the verticals. So we're going to offset to this side, both sides on this guy, both sides on this guy, both sides on that guy. And now we're going to do another offset and make that 50 thousandths, and offset that one, that one, that one. Okay, and what we can do is we can take all the lines that we want to keep, which are these outside lines. So we're doing a multi-select kind of a thing. Select all of that. And we're going to drop this down and pick our main layer. Okay, now if I escape out of this, you'll see that all those lines have changed color to be the main layer. And what I can do is pick this drop down and turn off this little green dot. Means turn off the construction lines. And I'm still on my main layer. Now I can zoom in and we'll trim all this stuff up. So let's go modify trim, and we want to select basically everything, and we want to trim everything to everything else. So this I'm cutting, cut that, all of those out, and basically you just use everything to trim everything else up all nice. Work from the outside towards the middle, and get rid of all these little loose lines. So some of those that I forgot and trimmed them outside, we'll go back and clean up. This one, whoops, and this one. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Escape out of that. Now select all your little leftover bits and hit delete. And I see that there's one left right there. I'll delete that. Well, I screwed up there. That's okay. We'll fix that. So let's pick everything, modify it, let's mirror it, and specify the start point of the mirror line. So that's good, right? If I snap right there, it'll mirror it, and now it's asking me yes or no, delete the source entities. No, I don't want to delete that. So now I've made a copy of that. What I'm going to do is turn back on my construction line for just a minute. I'm going to go modify, extend, and those ones that I screwed up, we're going to extend them to meet that center line. Escape out of that. If you don't escape out of the current command, you can't change your layers like that. So see one other little doohickey there. And that means that there's another little doohickey on this side. Delete that. Okay, there's our truss, the size that we want. So now I'm going to save it as railroad parts. We're going to call it demo truss, and that's just a our 2013 drawing. That's just so we can bring it back in. Now what I like to do is I like to flip to the dimensions. We'll add some linear dimensions so that when we pull this back up, we can tell what we're doing. When we import it, I mean, into Cricut, we can tell what we're doing. So either write this down or keep Draftsight open so you can figure out what's going on. We can turn the dimension layer off for right now. Oops. I'm going to switch to a different layer first. There you go. Now it's off. Now I go up, File, and Export as Demo Truss as a scalable vector graphics. Let's save that. Alright. Now, one extra step that I do, you could just pull that right into Cricut Design Space, but the problem that I find is that Design Space or Draftsight exports a bounding box around your part. So what I like to do is bring it into Inkscape. I'm going to make that big and open. It's in railroad parts, and there is my demo truss. So we'll open that, and here's where it gets weird because it goes over my other screen. Okay, so there's my demo truss, but let's zoom out. Okay, and you can see there's a black border around it. So everything's selected, and to change that, you go down to the bottom and shift click on a color. I'm going to make it black. Okay, and now I go to, it made the lines disappear, but believe me, they're still there. Go to Object and go to Ungroup. Okay, click off the object, click back on the object, and it says down at the bottom, group of one object. So it's just one object. I'm going to delete that. Now you can see my truss is still there. Now this is a group of 38 objects. Alright? This drawing right now is, if I change that to inches, it is X of 0.083. So let's save that. I don't have to do anything else, save as a copy or export it. I just save that. And let's go see if that imports correctly into the Cricut. Like that. I have my cat chewing on my headphone cable. So minimize that. Open up Cricut Design Space.